Welcome back. All right, so today we're going to do the playoff power rankings. And again, I should just put this on the board just to make sure everybody understands. This is from 2001 through 2024. So this is just that quarter century idea. And I only awarded points for winning series. So I awarded a certain amount of points for winning series. More points for the second round than the first, more points for having made it to the conference final, more points for having made it to the Stanley Cup final, and of course for winning the Stanley Cup, a lot of points. So this is also not like the regular season one I did, where I gave Vegas a little bit of a boost because generally their numbers have been ridiculous in the regular season. But I felt like for the postseason, it needed to be just a point system, and that's it. So with that in mind, number 32 on the board is Seattle. They've been in the league. This is their fourth year. They've only won one series. So I don't feel like Seattle being 32nd is necessarily going to bother anybody. Shouldn't bother anybody. So, yeah, just the one series win. Now, number 31 on the board is Columbus. Columbus won a series back in 2019, famously, over the Tampa Bay Lightning. I did not give any points for teams that won the qualifying round in 2020. I was only going with 16 teams, first round win, second round win, third round, etc. So Columbus does not accrue very many points. It is another reason why I'm really rooting for them to do something this year, make the playoffs, and maybe make a little noise should they get there. So those are the bottom two. Now we go into the next round. Number 30 is Arizona. Part of the reason Arizona ends up 30th ahead of the other two is, remember they went to the conference final back in 2012, and that is the determining factor for Arizona being 30th. And so if you're a Coyotes fan, there you go. They're ahead of Seattle and Columbus on this board. But not a whole lot else to say with Arizona. They missed the playoffs a lot over that period in time. Number 29 is Winnipeg. The Winnipeg Jets have had their struggles come playoff time. The regular season power rankings being as they are, they ended up higher on the regular season power rankings. Let me go ahead and cheat and look. Yeah, they were 26th there, 29th on this. It's by points. It has nothing to do with... I can hear the Jets fans already saying, this is why you hate us. No, I don't. This is just points. It's math. Math says that the Winnipeg Jets are 29th on this board. Number 28, Minnesota. The 0-3 run to the conference final keeps them from being lower in the rankings on this board. The Minnesota Wild have had some success in the regular season. I should just go ahead and have that... flip that around. So they were 21st on the regular season board. They're 28th here. Arizona was 32nd on the regular season board. They're 30th here. Seattle was 30th on the regular season board. They're 32nd here. Columbus, 31st in both. Consistency. All right. Number 27, Buffalo. So Buffalo, on the regular season power rankings, they were 29th. So they move up a bit. They've had a little more playoff success. And I understand people are going to go, wait, Buffalo made the playoffs? Yes, before their recent drought, which is a very long drought. It's an era of drought for them. But before that, yeah, they were a pretty good playoff team. They were a tough out, especially when they had Hasek as the goaltender, which is part of the era that's on the board here. Number 26, Toronto. So for the Maple Leafs on the regular season board, we're 24th. They're 26th here. So better in the regular season than the postseason. That does kind of track, doesn't it? Now, for Toronto, since we're going all the way back to 2001, there are conference final appearances there. I think there's two from 2001 through 2004. Nothing beyond that, of course. They haven't made it to the Stanley Cup final since 1967, which is also their last Cup win. And so Toronto, 26th on the board, doesn't really surprise me that much. Number 25 on the board, and they were number 27 in the regular season power rankings, and that's the New York Islanders. The Islanders round out this row. They have had a couple of conference finals, which is good because they went a long time in between series wins. I remember that series between the Islanders and Florida where they were both looking at extremely long times since they'd last won a round. But yeah, the Islanders now they've got a couple conference final appearances. They've also had some first round exits, but that does not qualify for any points here. And the reason that I didn't give points for losing in the first round is I already did the regular season power rankings, and I feel like that reflects who made the playoffs. This is about who has success in those playoffs when they get there. Number 24, Calgary. So the Flames on the regular season power rankings were 18th. So what that tells you is that when they get to the playoffs, they have their share of struggles, which makes sense because it was 2019 they were the top team in the conference, and then it didn't go all that well for them in the playoffs. But 2019 was it was a minefield for every fantasy team, all of them. So, yeah. And if anybody's wondering, this is my Hadouken. This is, of course, a Street Fighter 2 jersey. I got this from Geeky Jerseys, so for anybody who's curious. But yeah, Calgary starts this row. The Flames have a Stanley Cup final appearance, which keeps them out of this row, but not a lot beyond that. Speaking of which, at number 23, Nashville. They have a Stanley Cup final appearance, 2017 and all that. Nashville in the regular season, they're actually 10th, so 23rd. 23rd on the playoffs power rankings. So kind of rough. The regular season pretty good. Postseason not quite as much. So do they make the playoffs? Yes. Do they often do a lot in the playoffs? No. So it's part of the reason why I thought it would be fun to do the two different power rankings and do it that way. All right, number 22. And in the regular season, Vancouver was 12th. They dropped to 22nd when you factor in the playoffs. So in the playoffs, Vancouver's had their struggles. They did make it to the final in 2011. That's why they're 22nd. They're ahead of as many teams as they are. Outside of that, it's been tough. They have not made it to a conference final outside of that. They have had some series wins, which keeps them 22nd. But it is interesting, too. I'm looking at the power rankings board. Currently on the board, I'm looking at it. They're 21st. They're 22nd on this. It's just interesting to see. Oh, great. Now I've got another distraction. This is bad. This is just not a great thing. Anyways, number 21 on the board is Ottawa. Now, the Ottawa Senators, the regular season ranking for them, 16th. So they drop as well when you get into the playoff rankings. And right now on my power rankings board, they're 15th. And I can say all this because between now and Saturday, the power rankings board I'm looking at is going to change. Those are different numbers than in the last power rankings. And when this goes live, those numbers aren't going to be accurate either. So I can just throw that out there. Which means, yeah, I could be making stuff up, but why? Why would I do that? I would just say a weird team's number 1. And there you go. Number 20. And on the regular season board, they were 28th. So Edmonton, good playoff team. And when I get to doing videos on individual teams, that's something that I think is going to be fun to look at. Which ones are higher on the playoff power ranking board and which ones are higher on the regular season power ranking board. And for Edmonton, they're 20th. I do think they could have another Stanley Cup final appearance in the near future. Actually, that would take into account 2 Stanley Cup final appearances because you have 2006 and 2024. So even though they're 18 years apart, they both are factored into this. They had a long drought without playoffs as well. Number 19, Philadelphia. I'm going to stop referring back to the regular season one because that's going to make everything a mess if I keep referring back to it. At the end of the video, we can definitely take a look and see, where that's at. And again, I will be doing videos on each team and all that fun stuff. But Philadelphia's had a Stanley Cup final run in 2010. They're a pretty good playoff team once they get there. They do usually, it seems, get out of the first round at the very least, and they built up enough points to be 19th on this ranking. So that rounds out these 2 rows. We got 3 more rows to go. You guys can always let me know your thoughts. Number 18, Montreal. And now I'm looking down at the sheet thinking, well, where were they last week? Come on, Shan, get with it. Number 18 is Montreal. They had the Stanley Cup final run in 2021. They've had some good runs in there. The surprise run of 2010, for instance. So, yeah, Montreal ends up pretty high up on the board. Oh, we got a lot of Canadian teams already, don't we? Winnipeg, is that the highest rated Canadian team? Are we really doing that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. Yep. So there you go. Montreal, the highest ranked Canadian team on the board at 18th. I mean, they're the Canadians, so the Canadians should be the best Canadian team because they're the Canadians. They got that E in there, though, just to throw us all off, don't they? Number 17, Dallas. The Dallas Stars have had, so let's see, you've got a Stanley Cup final appearance in 2020. They did have some other good runs in there as well. They rack up enough points to be 17, just below the halfway mark, which of course is 16. So, yeah, bottom 16 here makes some sense. Are there any Stanley Cup winners from 01 until now? No. And that was kind of how I designed this to be, was that, yeah, the ones that have won the Stanley Cup should be higher up. That being said, number 16 on the board is Florida. Now, if I had done this 2 years ago, Florida would have been right down about here. But the last couple of years and the amount of points they've racked up, hundreds of points. I'm not going to tell you guys the exact formula because the people just tear the formula apart. I used to put on the board, here's how I figured everything out. And people are like, actually, you shouldn't do that kind of system. What you should do is, and if you weighted it this way, and then if you considered like the time of day when the games, it's like, oh my gosh, people overthink things a lot. But Florida's 16 because they did miss the playoffs a lot before Bill Zito took over. And Bill Zito's dragged them up into the top half of the board with the moves he's made and the fact the teams responded really well. So, yeah, 16 is Florida. Number 15, the New York Rangers, as I drop one on the floor. So, had to pick that up before one of the rabbits gets to it. The rabbits love magnets. No idea why. Number 15, and it doesn't magnetize them. I can't stick a rabbit to the board no matter how many they eat. Number 15, New York Rangers. Of course, I haven't tried it. But the New York Rangers have had some good runs in the playoffs. They have not got to the ultimate goal since 1994, which would not be factored into this video because it goes back to 2001. But again, the Rangers have had a Stanley Cup final appearance or two. So one or is it two? I think it's just the one. I think 2014, right? And they've had conference final appearances as well. But yeah, for the Rangers, the future still, I think, is okay. Like right now, I'm looking at Power Rankings board. They're 23rd because they've started losing again, but they've still got a good team. I still think they can rally and end up making the playoffs because why not? Number 14, Washington. So this is another Stanley Cup champion, right? 2018. But what keeps them down is not a lot of conference final appearances, no other Stanley Cup final appearance either. And they haven't won a round since that Stanley Cup win back in 2018. So that prevents Washington from potentially being in the top 10. This is where I'm going to remind you, too, that Las Vegas, I did not give them any different treatment just because they haven't been in the league as long as I did with the regular season, which I know people are going to be mad at me about. I'm aware of this. People are going to be like, well, he just favors Vegas. The regular season, Vegas has been excellent. And in the playoffs, they've racked up enough points to be ahead of all these teams, even though they're only in their 8th season. Number 13, also not Vegas. It's San Jose. San Jose's had some really strong teams, really good runs. One Stanley Cup final appearance in 2016, of course, which may have made them think that they were closer than they were. And, of course, then, they pick up Erik Karlsson and all this other fun stuff. But for San Jose, just outside the top 12. But if you're a San Jose fan, hey, for you guys, I'm gonna look back at the cheat sheet. San Jose was 13th, both on, so they were 13th on the regular season too. So consistency from San Jose, 13th in one, 13th in the other. 13's the lucky number for San Jose, and I have a Sharks jersey with my name on the back and the number 13. So it all works. All right, number 12 is St. Louis. The 2019 Stanley Cup win, of course, is going to help the Blues move up the board a lot from where they would have been without it, but that is kind of how this works. St. Louis has had some success outside of that, but nothing like that run in 2019. And since that run in 2019 where they won the Cup, some lean times in the playoffs. These teams, when they win Stanley Cups, very often they end up paying not necessarily a hefty price because you won the Stanley Cup, so you're pretty happy. But there can be setbacks in following years, which can be related to some of the moves that get made around deadline time. But yeah, St. Louis, number 12 on the board. Number 11, the Las Vegas Golden Knights. Yeah, the Vegas Golden Knights, number 11 on the board. Very impressive that they, with points alone, over the 7 playoffs that have been had with them in the league, they've garnered enough points to be all the way up to number 11. That they've gained more points than all of these teams is just ridiculous. So they finished just outside the top 10, But if I do this again next year, and I don't see any reason why I would, but if I did do this again next year, and if I just added the 2025 playoffs to that, I would not be surprised if Vegas moves up further based on 2025 playoffs, but we shall see. Number 10, New Jersey. So you've got a Stanley Cup final appearance in there. You've got a Stanley Cup champion as well. They were finalists in 01. They won a Stanley Cup in 2003. Oh, and they were also finalists in 2012. So all of that helps bring New Jersey up to 10th. So when they're in the playoffs, they're dangerous. Do they miss the playoffs often? Over the last dozen years? Sure. But are they dangerous when they get there? Also, sure. So yeah, New Jersey in the top 10. Number 9, Anaheim. So Stanley Cup win in 2007. They've had a couple of conference finals in there as well that just off the top of my head I can remember. Does get a little cloudy up there as you get older. But anyways, so yeah, 9th place for the Anaheim Ducks. Definitely better than where they are currently. Currently on the board, they're 25th, but it feels like they're trending in the right direction currently because they're starting to figure out how to score goals, and they're dangerous if they can score goals. But in the playoffs, they're dangerous anyways. Number 8, Carolina. So the Canes have conference final appearances. They have a Stanley Cup win in 2006. So even though they've had long stretches without playoffs as well, they've had enough success when they're in the playoffs that they end up number 8 on the board. What were they on the regular season board? They were 22nd on the regular season board. So that really is where I find the numbers fascinating. It may just be me. I get it. It may just be me. But looking at the difference between the power rankings of teams regular season and playoffs, I think that's a lot of fun to look at. So Carolina's number 8 on the board and pretty good in the playoffs. They do need another Stanley Cup though, don't they? Number 7, a 2-time Stanley Cup champion, the Los Angeles Kings. So the Kings 2 cups definitely get them there. Some of the runs they've gone on have definitely helped as well. But those 2 Stanley Cups, that's a lot of points. So, which is how this is all designed. And the LA Kings, just outside the top row. This is where if you're a Kings fan, you can get mad that I don't have 8 teams each row. I have 6. And so you're not in the top row. Which, this is how I used to do the power rankings all the time anyways. It used to be 6 in the top row, but there used to be 30 teams. And then you add 31, and then you add 32. It just makes a whole mess of everything, doesn't it? Number 6 on the board is Boston. The Boston Bruins were number 1 on the regular season power rankings. Playoffs, they're clearly not going to be. Stanley Cup champion in 2011. Stanley Cup final in 2019. Trying to think, were there any other finals in that time? Yes, 2013. And for Boston, I have watched them go to the final a lot. I've watched them win the Stanley Cup once. They've gone to the final plenty of times. And so, yeah, Boston, while right now the team seems to be trending towards some kind of retool, they've been pretty good come playoff time. Not as great as their regular season numbers, but pretty good. Number 5 is Colorado. So you have a Stanley Cup in 2001. You have a Stanley Cup in 2022. And so that definitely buoys the numbers for the Colorado Hurricanes. The Colorado Hurricanes, I moved Colorado and I stole Carolina's name at the same time. But yeah, I moved Carolina. It doesn't matter. It's fine. They're both natural disasters, so I can see why I'd mess one up with the other. And both of these are, look, Canes, the giant C, they're very, very similar. All right. Anyways, Colorado, number 5 on the board, the Colorado Avalanche, as they're still known. Utah can't have that name either. So, yeah, number 5 on the board for Colorado. I think they're going to win another Stanley Cup during the Nathan MacKinnon era. I just don't know what year it's going to happen, but I think they do win another Stanley Cup during his time. Number 4 is Detroit. So Detroit's been outside the playoffs for a long time, but they won the Stanley Cup in 2002. They won the Stanley Cup in 2008. They went to the final again in 2009. They racked up a ton of points there, and so they're 4th on the board overall. They've been outside the playoff picture for a while. They're trying to get back in this year. And currently the number 18 on my power rankings board. Number 3 on the board is Chicago. So 3 Stanley Cup wins definitely help the Blackhawks. Chicago, come playoff time, pretty darn good. And then 2017 happened where they They lost in the first round and got swept by Nashville. Now, 2020, they did get an upset win over the Oilers. That's a qualifying round matchup, though. Does not get taken into account points-wise. But still, third place for Chicago, that's respectable. That's a very respectable place for them to be. Number 2, Pittsburgh. For the Penguins, Stanley Cups in 2009, 2016, and 2017. 3 Stanley Cups. Put them up to number 2. They haven't won a series since 2018, so they're in the same position as Washington. The difference being that right now, Washington looks like they could be the best team in the league, and Pittsburgh does not. So right now, Washington looks like they could make up some ground on Pittsburgh, but the overall numbers, Pittsburgh's still way ahead. 1 Stanley Cup versus 3 Stanley Cups, and there you go. Number 1 on the board is Tampa. So for anybody who got ahead of me, and if you fast forwarded to the end, well, there you go. I did talk to my rep from YouTube about that, and she's like, yeah, people skipping to the end with list videos, it happens all the time. Nothing we can do about it. Which, yeah, I mean, and I was just glad to hear other channels go through the same thing. But Tampa Bay being number 1, Stanley Cup win in 2004, Stanley Cup win in 2020, Stanley Cup win in 2021, Stanley Cup finalists in 2015. Yeah, Tampa Bay's had success. Famously flamed out in 2019 against Columbus, but then they won the Stanley Cup in back-to-back years. They went back to the final in 2022, and people still want to talk about Tampa Bay as if they've been lucky and favored, and they're not really that good, and those cups don't count, and whatever. They counted for those players, and I'm not going to disparage players who go out there and put their bodies on the line. I don't care what the situation is. Hockey's hockey, and so there you go. Tampa Bay, number 1 on the board. From Tampa Bay through Seattle, there's your playoff power rankings. And now I can get to work on individual teams and doing videos on that. And, do my best to make sure there's something in each video that people will want to watch and want to discuss. So I'm not sure yet which order I'm going to do these teams in. I'm not planning on averaging out between regular season and playoffs and coming out with an average. I don't want to do that. But at any rate, there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support, as always. It's greatly appreciated. I will talk to you again soon.